I had an individual tell me, you know, when my granddaughter was in the hospital, about the only thing I could do was pray Psalm 23. That's the only thing that got us through those hard times, those scary times. And so I pray that even as we have spent 5 weeks and next week is 6, I pray that Psalm 23 will get into your heart and that it would be there in those times that you need Psalm 23. Let's read the point together. If you have your outline handy. The point, of course, is right underneath the title, underneath the text. Let's read it together. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Now this morning, I would like to again use the metaphor that we switched to last week. Does anybody remember? We went from the Good Shepherd to the gracious host. We went from the Good Shepherd to the gracious host. Remember, the first 3 Sundays, we talked about sheep and shepherds. But then, suddenly, the text sort of changes perspective, and we're with this God who is a gracious host, who is welcoming us into fellowship. Now, this morning, I would like to do 3 things. First, give some background to the hospitality in the ancient Middle East. Second, I would like to give a modern equivalent that I pray will apply directly to the lives of our fathers. And third, I would like to invite those same fathers to receive a blessing. Now, fill in the blank number 1. Let's get right to it. In the ancient Middle East, hospitality was more than just roast beast. In the ancient Middle East, hospitality was just more than roast beast. For those of you who are trying to read my mind and you wrote beef, I got you. Roast beast. It's a better rhyme. There are several things a host did in the ancient Middle East when a person came to their house. The first thing that they did was they gave them the kiss of peace. Now, in America, we are very non-touchy people. But we are learning, especially my guys in Mongolia, how in Mongolia people are very touchy. People are going to invade your space. And when I lived in Europe, it was amazing because when you came into someone's house and you knew them or you were a relative of them, they would give you a kiss. And when I traveled in Europe, I went south. And I noticed the further you went south, the more you got kissed. Until I made it to Italy where you got kissed 4 times. The beginning of the church was just this mass of people kissing each other. But that is a tradition that is held around the world, and especially in the ancient Middle East. The second thing the host would do is offer some cool water to wash the feet. The feet were the primary mode of transportation, and roads were dirty. And so when you wanted to refresh your guests, when you wanted to invite them in, you gave them some cool water to wash your feet. We remember how Jesus washed the feet of his disciples when they came in for the Last Supper. But that's also a tradition. But the final one is when it's a special guest, when it's someone you really want to bless and you really want to refresh, you would take a little bit of oil and you would put it on top of their head. And that makes them smell good. And you know, when you smell good, you feel good. And so that is the third thing that the gracious host would do. Now we're going to talk about the oil a little bit later, but I want to spend just a little bit of time on the cup, because that's something that we can be a little more familiar with. The text says, my cup runneth over. Now what's all that about? How many of you have ever been to a restaurant and you've received good service? Anybody ever been to a restaurant and received good service? Part of the element of good service is your cup is never what? It's never empty. The tip is definitely affected if I have to sit there with my cup empty. And sometimes I have to push my cup up to the edge of the table. And sometimes I have to ting the cup a little bit. Hey, I need some. Okay, there's a message being sent. We're done with you. Your booth is ready for the next people. Please leave. When the cup is empty, we get a sense that the party's over. It's time to move on. Now, in ancient Middle Eastern cultures, they would fill the cup up to the brim when you have a guest there that you want to keep. And in fact, if it's a guest that you want to stay all day, you'll fill that cup up and you'll let it dribble over a little bit. Because not only do you not let the cup go dry, you let it overflow a little bit. It says, I want you to be here. And so we have the illustration of the host, our gracious host, our Heavenly Father, saying, I want to bless you and refresh you, and I want you to stay with me. Now, why all this about hospitality? Hospitality was meant to refresh and renew the people who were coming to you on their journey. And so they would be ready to continue on their journey. It helps them keep going. Today, fathers are journeying. Fathers are coming and going all the time. And the primary mode of transportation for that father is usually a car. Now, oil is a big part of your car. We're going to talk about that a little bit more after we fill in the blank number 2. Oil is so important to your car. Let it run out and you won't go far.